Hi, I'm Anna.
And I'm Vivian.
We're a mother-daughter duo who have been on a very specific journey for the last 28 years, and now it's time to bring you into the conversation. Welcome to the Pain Project podcast, where we will tackle the complexities and the challenges of living with chronic pain. Our goal is to see pain unmasked and stories unleashed. Thank you for joining us. Let's get started.
All right. Welcome to episode 5 of the Pain Project podcast. And today we've been having this conversation behind the scenes, not recorded, for a little bit now, of kind of feeling a little bit at a crossroads and wanting to affect change. There's all these things that we want to do to, create a better world for people like us. But there's some anxiety surrounding it. Some worries and fears about saying too much or not enough and trying to find that balance. And so we figured it might be a good thing to dive into it on a podcast and really talk about the difficulties that we're personally looking at and see if we can do something different. So,
yes, sounds good. It's definitely, I think, it's been a few weeks since we've actually put out a podcast because of sickness at your house, between you and your kids. And I've had a lot of physical issues as well, and having a steroid injection, and it's taking me forever to recover from that. And it's just been really hard to just sit down and do this. But at the same time, during all of that, we're still having those conversations of what are we doing here, and why are we doing it? We're constantly coming back to our why.
Right.
And so yeah, here we are, and we're gonna reiterate our why, because it hasn't changed. The why, our original why, has not changed at all.
I think what we're learning, this is the Pain Project, is very much an ever evolving thing right now, as we are, we've never taken the time like we are right now to think about chronic pain and to think about the emotional pain that comes with it. And we think about it, but it's not, we've never taken this amount of time and dedication to figuring it out. And so as people are watching and stuff like that, I always want to communicate, like, they're coming along with us for the ride.
Yeah. Real time.
Yeah.
It's real time revelation. It's real time. Oh my gosh, what is going on?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the effects that it's having on us.
Right.
So yeah, for sure.
So I think one thing that we've really been talking about the last, couple weeks while we've been, I've been sick, and we've been talking about, okay, what are we going to talk about next? And then there's always this feeling of, like, I don't know, I've had this feeling of, like, I want to say this, but I'm worried about how it's going to be perceived. I want to say, my experience, but who am I going to hurt in the process? Because there's been people that have hurt me, and I don't want to hurt other people in return. But here's the revelation, I guess, that we're coming to, is if we want to see change, we've got to be a little bit less filtered, and maybe a lot less filtered. We need to say what we're going to say. And I posted a video on social media saying, like, we're not going to be mean, we're not going to dehumanize, we're not going to pull people down,
shame and condemn.
Yeah, none of that. But we are going to bring to light the issues that we see and the issues that we have personally faced, because we know that we are not the only people who have dealt with stuff like this. You know, like there have been plenty of other people who have dealt with, you know, feeling dismissed and brushed under the rug. I have felt like as a chronic pain sufferer, I'm floating through a system that wasn't designed for me. In a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, yes, we're going to talk about the medical community, but it's also, I think where we're going to place a lot of emphasis is church communities. You know, and so as a Christian, as somebody who has chronic pain, there's this feeling of going through a system that wasn't designed for me. There's a system in place for people who get sick and then get better. But there's not really anything in place for people who get sick and stay sick. And so we want to see that changed. And that's
why we're here.
And that's why we're here. And that's what we
want to see the change, and we want to provide support for people who've had those experiences as well. They're not alone. We're not alone. And there is a community of people who are going to support people who get sick and stay sick.
Right.
And that there's no shame with that. There's no,
it's not a reflection on someone's character or their faith or
level
anything.
or
If we get sick and stay sick. I mean, that's just what happens sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah. You used that phrase a second ago. You were floating through a system that you weren't designed for. And with regards to church, and I think that's even part of your story as to why we started the Pain Project.
Yeah. So the fear is that we'll say something and that, you know, I always get this mental picture of a pendulum, you know, like there's a fear that we're going to say something that is going too far, that it's like, it's going too far one direction. But when something that I keep coming back to is like, when the pendulum is so far in one direction, if it's so far over on the side of people are getting hurt at church, people who deal with chronic pain are getting hurt emotionally, spiritually at church. And that is more often than not. When the pendulum is pushed so far that way, we've got to cut that line. And it might swing really far the other way, but it has to, so that we can find some sort of equilibrium. And
when it swings back after you've cut it, it's going to break some things. It's maybe cause a little bit of ruckus on that other side, but it's also going to come back.
Yes.
Just because that's the natural effect of things.
Right.
So we want to be part of that. Let's cut that line and do something. So with church, I think we forget that, like, what's the purpose of church? And I'm not here to answer that question. Like, what's the purpose of church? But, because I think everyone's been studying that for years and years and trying to figure it out. But if you think about why you go to church and what happens when you come home from church and what you do and think about during the week, just as a tradition, just as a habit of something that you do as a Christian, what gets left out, I think, is that person who's chronically suffering.
Yeah.
With pain and illness, especially an illness that doesn't have any kind of cure or treatment.
Yeah.
And I would like to say, and what I'm working through right now is in church with regards to chronic pain sufferers, where is Jesus? Where are we communicating Jesus to people who are suffering?
Yeah.
Are we saying Jesus wants you to be healed? That Jesus doesn't want you to be sick? I've heard those things direct to my face
Yeah.
in my early days of diagnosis.
And I've heard
And
things like, and so I think this is important as we're talking about being bold and swinging the pendulum. We've got to name the stuff. We've got to name the things. We can't be ambiguous about the things that we've experienced so that we can talk about how it needs to be instead.
correct.
So like you've had people tell you that Jesus wants you to be healed and you've got to have more faith and maybe you've got to repent of stuff so that you can be healed. I've had people,
It's sin in my life that is causing the illness.
I've had people say to me, well, you just need to have, you just need to be able to step out and one more time for prayer. Like what if you stop right now? And what if you don't go and get prayer this one time? And that was the time that God was going to give you healing. And so you just need to make sure that you're never missing an opportunity, because what if the one that you miss is the one that you were supposed to be healed? That it's so damaging. And we talked about this. I believe we talked about it in the first podcast, where it's like that mindset, the mindset of constantly trying to think, okay, maybe it's that next prayer, or maybe I just need to have more faith, or maybe I need to repent of a sin. It gives us a faulty view of God, because what is God doing then? Is he just saying, it's right here, it's here for you to come get it,
Dangling a carrot
and
that you can never get to.
that you can never get to? And that means that he's on the
Somewhere
other
else.
side of it. He's somewhere else, rather than being who God actually says he is, which is Emmanuel, God with us. He's a provider. He's a protector. He's with us.
He's an advocate
Yeah. He's not waiting on the other side
for us to do just the right thing and say just the right prayer.
the right formula.
I had this one person that I follow on Facebook, and she suffers severely. And a woman commented, she was asking for prayer, and a woman commented, pray like this 3 times, say it with energy, say it 3 times, and do that every 5 hours, and God will meet you. And I responded, because that to me is, are you saying that there's a formula that you have to conjure to get the Lord God Almighty, I am the great I am, to do something to heal you? I just made me so angry, Viv.
Yeah.
But her response was, I've learned this from whoever the preacher was, and it is working. People are being healed. And it just, number one, I don't believe it. Number two, I think that poor girl who's listening to that, well, I don't know what she thought about it. But for me, it's not a representation of who Jesus is as Emmanuel, God with us, when we suffer.
Like it just makes God sound like a genie or a secret
The Wizard
code.
of Oz behind the
A secret
curtain.
code that needs to be cracked. Like if you do it like this and 5 times with this type of voice, like what are you talking about? Absolutely
I think it makes
not.
God look awful.
Yeah, as if God is so small that he must be catered to in this specific way to get what he wants out of us. Like that is not the God of the Bible. That's not the Jesus of the gospel. That is not the God who came down and lived among people and lived in the mess and accepted the mess and condemned the religious leaders and condemned the people. Jesus condemned the people who put blocks in the way of people coming to him.
Rules and laws and blocks.
Yeah. The religious leaders of his day and our day This is the same. It is the same because people are the same. People put blocks up that elevate themselves to a point of authority and say, God is far away from you because of who you are, because of what you've done, because of your circumstance. And so to get to him, you need to do what I say. That is why people leave the church.
Yeah.
That is why people will leave the faith, because there is not an accurate representation. And I've heard, okay, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but bear with me. I have heard people, Christians, condemn other Christians for leaving church, for leaving the faith, and saying, well, if you're leaving because you were hurt by people, then your faith must have not been that strong anyways. And your faith was in people, and that's your first mistake, that your faith was in people and not in Jesus. Excuse me. When the Jesus that you have been preaching to people says this, then please don't victim blame. Please don't condemn people for taking you at your word about what Jesus says and about who Jesus is, because you're supposed to be a representation of him. And if you are not representing him, people are going to take you at your word. And they're going to avoid church like the plague.
If that's Jesus, I don't want to. So can I tell a story?
Absolutely.
So when I was very first diagnosed, so 15 years ago-ish,
mm-hmm.
I think I said this in the first podcast, but I'm going to go ahead and say it again a little bit. Up to that point, before I was diagnosed, I was doing it right.
Yeah.
I was pastor's wife. I was reading my Bible, exercising. I was doing all the things.
Mm-hmm.
So when I realized something was very wrong and my legs stopped working, my body wasn't working right, my brain wasn't working right. And it seemed like it was overnight. It was probably over a period of a few months, but it seemed like one day I was fine. And then the next day I was not fine anymore. My body was not working. And I questioned God. I'm like, what is going on with me? I need help. Where are you? So I immediately did what I was supposed to do, which was call on God,
mm-hmm.
but I couldn't find him anywhere.
Right.
It felt silent.
Yeah.
And I still kind of go like, excuse me, why? But whatever.
Yeah.
So what my next step? I go to my people, my church, and I'm like, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I am suffering. My whole life has just changed. I probably didn't communicate it just like that because I was very lost, but yeah. I was looking for help. I was looking for encouragement. I would go to church and we would sing these songs and I'd be like, this is a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
Blessed, you give and take away. No.
Don't take away from me, please.
No. What do you mean take away? You're taking away my legs, like
my life,
my ability to parent, my ability to stand up and be on a worship team. What? You're taking away. I mean, no. And I would walk out. I would just walk out.
That's not a good look for the pastor's wife to walk out.
No, it's not. And I'm sorry, man. So, I mean, this is a huge story, so I'll try to keep it short, but, so as I'm searching for encouragement, I'm searching for the love of God. I felt unloved. I felt abandoned by God because I didn't understand this level of suffering. I couldn't think straight, walk straight. I'm in bed. It was not good. What I found was the answers that people gave me was, are you reading your Bible? No, I'm not. I can't see it to read it. Like literally,
Like my
the
eyes aren't
words are
working.
jumbled.
Yeah.
My eyes aren't working, nor is my brain. So, and if you have fibromyalgia and you're listening to this, I think it's a fibro fog. It is real, but I didn't know that. This was a long time ago, and it was not studied as well as it is now. And I said to this well-intentioned lady, no, I'm not, but I'm listening to music, which I still do this day, and it feeds me. Well, that's not the word of God. So that's not gonna help you, because it's not the word of God. And in my brain, I'm just like, so God is only in the Bible? God is only in the Bible? Like, he's only in this book.
And I can't even read it.
And I can't even read it.
I can't, he's unattainable.
He's unattainable to me in my suffering.
Yeah.
I also had another dear person tell me that I had sin in my heart. And that is one of the reasons why I was in this place of suffering, and that I needed to search. And they gave me what they thought the sin was. And I'm not going to say it here at this point. One day, maybe I'll be bold enough to actually say what it was, but it wasn't, that's not what it was.
Mm-mm.
And that's also saying that God is punishing me for something without telling me that I did it. It's like your parent taking you to the bedroom and saying, you're getting a spanking, but I am not telling you what you did.
It's if you don't know what you did, I'm not going to tell you.
But I am going to discipline you for it, and I am going to make you suffer. And again, that casting aspersions on who God is.
Yeah.
Without representing Jesus. When I was in the depth of my suffering, no one showed me Jesus.
Yeah.
And I hate saying that. And
I know. And I know that's really hard. It's really hard to say, because like you said, these are well-intentioned people. And this is where, right. And this is where we're not being mean. We're not being dehumanizing, because we recognize that these are people who are ill-equipped.
Yeah.
And
have been their whole growing up.
Right. Because imagine if then they were faced with suffering, and how then they would talk to themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the problem. It's a systemic issue. It's not like, oh, this one person said this one thing and then that is what messed me up for life. It's like, no, this is a mindset. This is a theology and a teaching about God and about pain and life. And it's wrong. And it hurts people, and it is not an accurate representation of God. And it is, people are ill-equipped to be able to be there for people.
I had a pastor
to show up.
I had a pastor. We were at the house. This is early on. We were at the house, and we were sitting there, and we were telling him about what was going on with me. And he just kind of looked, and it's so funny because of where this pastor is now and what he's experienced in his life. I think he would have done very different things now based on what he's learned, but he didn't know then. And I'm good with that. But it was so interesting because he looked at me and he was like, so are you in pain like right now? Like, where's it hurt? Like right now? Like this, I felt like he was trying to catch me in, are you really sick? Are you really in pain? And I remember thinking, oh my God, what kind of question is that? I mean, and I'm just sitting there. So it's like,
you're now a carnival freak show. Yes, I'm in pain all the time.
Yeah. and I didn't know. And I didn't know. No. I actually said no, because at that very moment, I wasn't thinking about my pain. I was thinking about communicating with him where I was, and that spiritually and physically, I am not okay.
Right. Yeah. And people who deal with chronic pain can, I think, relate to, you kind of, I mean, there are sometimes, some days you cannot put it on the back burner. It is right
Yeah.
there. And
I say it's driving. It's the driver.
it's the driver.
I
There
had
are,
a
there are other
chiropractor
days. There are other days where it's in the back seat and you can block it out. Like, I'll have to, whenever I go to my rheumatologist, she's like, okay, so like, what's been your pain level for a while? And I'm like, so to be honest, I don't know. I'm on autopilot as far as all that stuff goes. I'm generally in pain, but I'm trying not to focus on it so that I can parent my kids. And so I have to like sit there and consciously go, okay, where am I hurting? How long has it been like that? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like I have to pay attention for a moment because I've got to live life.
Yeah.
You've got to pause it as
Yeah.
much as possible until it's in the driver's seat. But
which usually that's the cycle.
that's the
In the back
progression.
seat, it's in the passenger seat. Oh, you're ignoring me? Okay, I'm gonna drive.
I'm gonna drive now.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. I went to the doctor the other day and before my steroid injection, and I'm telling you, I got asked in just a matter of an hour, probably 6 or 7 times, what's your pain level? How would you rate your pain level? Where does it hurt exactly? And I'm like, and I've already written it down on a piece of paper that they have right there. I think I literally, I'm like, if I could give, when I review them, that I'm going to say that especially with someone with fibromyalgia, I know they're dealing with my neck and my degenerative disc disease, but it's like, at one point I said, do you mean what level of pain I'm in according to, for this appointment?
Right. Like in this vicinity, is this what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Or are you talking about full body pain?
Yeah.
You have to be specific. Yeah.
It's so
on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah. And I think chronic pain sufferers need a whole nother pain scale.
Yeah, it's different.
Because it's not, it just isn't accurate. Anyway, that's the medical world, and we would love to have a say in that too. But still, how we live our lives daily with regular people, it's very hard to explain.
Well, and
levels of pain and
I mean, and we can't, we're not the ones writing the medical textbooks, right? And we're not the one teaching the classes to the doctors, and we can't really change that right now. I'm hoping someday in the future that we will see change in that area. But where we can influence more change, I think, is in the church
or Christians,
just Christians. Because well, and if we're trying,
are we at church doing this right now? No, we are not in church. We are
right.
We're in
a little bubble outside.
We're in our bubble, and we're talking about this because right now this kind of teaching is not happening. This kind of talk isn't happening in the church. And I just want to put one thing out there about where's Jesus when we suffer? The calling to go to the poor and go to the sick, that includes chronic pain sufferers. That sick person, just because we don't look sick and we're not in bed 24/7, or we don't have boils on our face, or we don't have cancer riddled in our body, does not mean that we are not included in that.
Right.
Be with the sick.
Right.
Minister to the sick. Yeah.
Because if there's ever a question about where Jesus is, he's with the downtrodden, and I mean, he is God with us. He is with everybody.
So, and I had to figure that out because I couldn't find him when I was first diagnosed and
Yeah.
was really struggling. And I really considered walking away from the faith completely.
Yeah.
And that's really hard for me to say.
Right.
But I wandered around there a little bit because I'm thinking I am that person that you talked about earlier in, if Jesus is not here and I can't find him and he's who they say he is, I got to walk away.
Yeah. I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thankfully, where I landed at that moment was, I'm going to go to, I did have a friend say, what do we know about God? What do we know? What do we know about God? What's true? And I said, he's faithful. And I knew that, didn't always feel it, but I knew it.
Right.
So and she's like, okay, so can you just like stay there? And I'm like, okay, I'll just stay there.
I'm just going to chill out. Yeah.
So and he did promise, again, hard for me to understand because I didn't feel it, is that he promised he would never leave us or forsake us. And he said that to the Israelites who were screwing up left and right.
Right.
So I'm like, truth, I can believe in. All right. So
yeah,
I am not going to, I knew that we were created to worship. I believe that. As a worship leader, as a singer, I knew we are created to worship. And I knew that if I walked away from God, I would have to worship something. And I went down the list. I'm like, I don't want to worship a false God. That sounds awful. They're all dead.
right.
And it wasn't that I didn't believe in God. It just I didn't want to follow.
Well, and if we believe the things about God that we've been taught, there's a difference between what some of the stuff that we read in the Bible and some of the stuff that's being preached at us, right? Like the stuff that's being preached is, well, if you do this, this, and this, then God will meet you. You're far away from God, but if you do this, then you can get back. If you read your Bible like this, then you can get back.
Right. Your heart is sick. You're a sinner.
Right. Rather than there's that teaching, but then there's the passages of scripture that say that if I make my bed in the depths of hell, there you are with me. And so for me, like when I've struggled, because I've struggled with my faith as well. And it's like, I can either listen to what they're talking about and say, I'm not interested in that and walk away. Or I can look at the Bible and say, okay, they're preaching something that's not accurate. This is what's accurate.
Right.
I saw a quote that said, she said, I can either look at what they say and believe what they say to be true and say, I don't want anything to do with that God, and walk away. And I can't have anything to do with you. Or maybe I'm right. Maybe this is right. And I can't have anything to do with them. Those are your two options. And that's where I feel like I'm at. I'm like, I am a Christian. I do believe in God, and I believe in the things that I've read about God, in that he is with us. He is kind. He is not a genie. He is not tricking me. He's not out to get me.
He's slow to anger. He's abounding in steadfast love. He's compassionate.
I'm going to believe that. And because I believe that, I do also believe that people and church is important, because it's important to God. And so what do I do then? Now I've got to try to fix this with the help of God, with the help of other people who see what's messed up. And if people come to church because they're looking for hope, right? People come to Jesus because they're looking for hope. And if when they get to church, if that's not what they're experiencing, then we have got to fix it. Because I would rather be a little bit wrong on some of my, the little bits of theology, and I'd rather be wrong on some of that than mess up on the mandate that was given to us by Jesus to love others. We love God and we love others.
Yeah. How are we taking care of people? How are we
Yes.
making sure that they're okay?
Yeah.
Giving them, you have to serve, you have to go, you have to do, and you do. Well, no. How are we taking
No.
care of people and making sure they feel cared for?
Yeah.
Sick or not sick.
Right. Yeah. And it's not about, because I think that's where churches end up going wrong. It's like, what can you do for me? What can you do? Like, okay, you got to serve, you got to give. If you're not tithing 10%, then maybe you're going to miss out on God's blessing. I'm sorry, I don't mean to get into tithing theology, but maybe if you tithed more, then you would be healed because there's blessing waiting for you if you tithe. And it's like, excuse me, that's a little self-serving.
And Jesus,
that's not what Jesus said.
Jesus doesn't say that.
Jesus doesn't say that. I have a whole tangent about that I will save for another day.
Exactly.
Because this is a podcast about pain and chronic pain. But man, with chronic pain comes emotional pain and spiritual pain.
And that's going to come out with me in this pain project, because I have found that those voices that I heard early on, and even some experiences that I had when I was younger, that were very traumatic. I had all of these voices telling me, you're fine, get over it, go on. You need to trust in the Lord. You need to move forward. You are fine. I listened to that and never dealt with what was actually going on with me. Never acknowledged how difficult it was for my life to have changed so drastically. So, and being here, however many years later, realizing, oh crap, I have not listened to my voice at all, which I think we should listen to our voices. I think God gives us our wisdom in and of ourselves for ourselves.
Yeah.
Which I was not raised to believe. So again, here's this pendulum. I'm going clip. Guess what? I'm probably going to break a couple of things as this pendulum comes out, and I say,
I'm going to listen to myself right now. I'm going to listen to, and maybe there's times when I shouldn't be listening to myself this much, but my tendency is to do the other. My tendency is to not listen to myself and to not listen to my voice and to downgrade myself. And I'm going to swing the other way. Okay, so some people may be asking, Anna, Vivian, we're supposed to be talking about chronic pain. Why are we harping on emotional pain? Why are we talking about spiritual pain and church hurt and stuff like that? What is the correlation and why are we talking about it? That is my question to you. Do you want to answer that question?
Sure. It would be very simple to be able to just say, I have fibromyalgia and this happened and this happened and this happened. And I would prefer that to be my story, honestly. But the story is I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, but even before that, even with the chronic pain that came with endometriosis and infertility and things like that, the insensitivity or the lack of intentionality in the words of people in using God or Jesus to say, you know, you're suffering because you're this, because giving you some answer as to why you're suffering rather than just being with you,
right,
causes emotional pain.
Yeah,
because you're now, something's wrong with you,
right? You did something
you're a person, not just your body is hurting, but your person has now been assaulted.
Yeah.
Your emotions and your mental state, you're already struggling. I'm already struggling with my body not working right. And now I'm being told that Jesus isn't going to help me because I don't have enough faith, or those kinds of things. It's like getting hit in the face, but it's your heart.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're already in pain, and then you get hit and told, you're fine.
Or you're doing it wrong, or you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Or you wouldn't suffer so much if you had this on board.
Right.
Or
yes.
And I'm not saying that we don't try to help people. I'm saying you posted that thing about the ministry of presence without the promise of a changed circumstance.
Right.
When you don't provide that for people and they feel alone, that causes emotional pain.
Yeah.
When you think you have all the answers for someone else's journey and it's different than what's actually happening, that causes emotional pain. When you gaslight someone, that causes emotional pain. When you tell them what you're feeling isn't real, it's this, that causes emotional pain. So how does it go together?
How do you separate it?
Yeah.
There is no separation. Yeah. And I think that's,
and I cannot be the only one. And obviously, even you having an advocate your whole life, you got into adulthood in church where you were
immediate dismissal. Yeah.
Immediate dismissal.
Yeah. It was kind of a weird, rude awakening as an adult of, so we lived in different places. We were going to different churches, and all of a sudden I have felt very fortunate as a child that I was shielded from a lot of that baggage that comes from, well, you're doing it wrong, or this is what, I was shielded from that. But as an adult, it came in real strong. And I was told when I went for prayer because I was having a bad flare, and I was told that, yeah, I will pray for you, but I just get this feeling that you're using your pain as a crutch so that you don't have to do things. Excuse me. And this is someone I didn't know very well at the time.
And I'm going to add to that. You had just gotten off of a long-term medication.
Yes.
Because it was going to hurt your.
Well, it wasn't working anymore.
It wasn't working anymore. It was causing acid reflux in your throat, in your voice, your vocal cords were being affected, and it was going to end up eventually hurting your fertility. And that just was not.
It wasn't something I wanted to mess with at that point.
So you were now learning to navigate your pain journey without your medication that you've had on board for 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
I'm just
no, it's good. It's good background.
Did they
and when I
ask
went
those questions?
No, when I went to go look for help in just spiritual support, I wasn't asking for answers. I was just saying, hey, can you be with me? Can you pray with me? And I was met with, you're suffering wrong, and you're probably using your suffering to get out of stuff. Excuse me. Back way off. You don't know me. And this is a revelation I had recently. I am physically sick. Maybe I need a crutch. Maybe, who cares if I have a crutch? I'm not well. I might need one. That's a whole thing. But
yeah, it's so good. It's so accurate.
I think the thing that
please, whoever's listening to this, spread that. Understand that. It's so important. It's so important.
Yeah. And I think that that's what we're learning as we get into this, that we cannot address we can't fix people's chronic pain. That's not why we're here. Clearly, obviously, we know that. We're not here to say, follow these 5 steps and then you'll be well again. That's not why we're here.
Because we tried that.
Right.
And it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Right. But what we're understanding is that there is so much emotional pain that is tied to our chronic pain. We can't fix the chronic pain. We can't, like, whoever's listening, we can't make you not sick. We can't make you feel better within your body. We can't take away your physical pain. But what we can do is set out to change the systems that cause additional unnecessary emotional pain on people like us. And so prevent it, try to prevent it from happening again. And our goal is to provide a space to heal emotionally and some place safe to share your story. You know, we have experienced feeling like we've had to filter ourselves so that we don't hurt people. But who continues to get hurt when we are quiet? We do. And people like us.
Yeah. I had a traumatic experience when I was in high school, and I will share it on another podcast.
Yeah.
If we think that that's a good thing to do, because it has a lot to do with what we're talking about and what I'm going through right now. But every time I told that story after, I was silenced because it made people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
My emotion about it made people uncomfortable. And I am just now coming to the realization that it was a traumatic experience that I never dealt with.
Yeah.
And that I was gaslighted to believe that it didn't matter.
No big deal.
And it's no big deal. And I should be fine. And literally after all of these years, should move on. So, and then that happened to me again when I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So being told that you're fine and you just need to move forward and believe and hope and pray and just trust that the Lord wants you to be well.
Don't speak out, because it'll make people uncomfortable, and it could hurt people.
Well, don't get emotional about it either.
No, that's too much. We can't handle that.
And that is not what we're doing here. No. We're speaking out. We're creating a space for us to speak out so we can affect change.
Yeah.
Right now we're talking about in the church community with Christians, with leaders.
Yeah.
We're asking them to listen so that people will stop being emotionally, spiritually, and mentally wounded by other people as they are suffering with chronic pain.
Yeah. And we're not expecting perfection. We are not expecting that everyone's going to just be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, and never getting hurt. Like, we know no one's ministry, no one's life is perfect. We will hurt people. That's how it goes.
People hurt people.
What we are asking for is for people to not be defensive when someone says, hey, you hurt me. This is hurtful. And we're asking for, it's like the when you know better, you do better thing. Like, if you see that people are being hurt by the way that you're operating in the world and by the way that you're representing Jesus, then please listen.
Yeah. Take
it seriously and do better. That's literally it. No condemnation, no judgment. I harbor a little bit of judgment if people hear and see the harm and actively choose to not change.
And keep perpetuating the hurt.
I harbor a little bit of judgment for that.
Agreed.
But that's probably not who we're talking to. Because why would they listen to us?
Right.
We're talking to the people who are genuinely good-intentioned, well-intentioned people who want to represent Jesus and who want to love well and take care of people. That's who we're talking to. And that's our message to the non-chronic pain sufferers, to the church people. And then, like what you said, Mom, our message to the chronic pain sufferer is we are setting out to create a space that is safe for you to be able to share your story, for people to be able to come and say unfiltered their stories. And we're going to do the same. We're trying to create this space for ourselves too. We're the prototypes, is what we keep saying. It's like, we're working this out in real time. We are the prototypes. And we're inviting people along the journey with us, and we hope that people will join us. So I would say if people want a safe place, but they're worried about sharing their story and they're worried about who they're going to hurt or worried about being silenced, that's not going to happen here. Send us a message. People can send us messages. We're going to put this out on social media so that people know that they can send us messages to share their stories. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's all I got on. I mean, that's not all I got. There's
more to it, but for the sake of this podcast, I think we've covered a lot.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are listening, and for Vivian and I think what you're going to hear more from us is not just a anecdote or a thing, a saying that might be inspirational, which I love. I love inspirational sayings. I love to be inspired, but you're going to hear what's behind that. And for me, I think that is what's going to be very healing for me as I move forward in making sure my story, that I can tell my story for myself.
Yeah.
So that's what you're going to be hearing from us.
Yeah. And I'm excited about that. I know it can be a little nerve-wracking, but I'm excited. I think it'll be good. So thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you for coming along with us in this journey. If you have any questions or thoughts, ideas, we're here, we're open, and we're listening. So yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks for joining our conversation today. If there's something you want to add to the conversation, leave a comment, send a message, or email us at hello@thepainproject.co. If you found this helpful or encouraging, please consider following us on social media, subscribing on YouTube, all the things. You know what to do. As always, we are so glad that you're here. No matter who you are and where you're coming from, we're glad for your perspective. The table is big, and there's room for everyone. Until next time.